Welcome to Skinner and Chalmers Weekly Roast. Today, dirt and bones, Skinner's greenhouse gamble, and a recipe for disaster.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of Skinner and Chalmers Weekly Roast. As always, I'm your charming Chalmers, and by my side is my silly Skinner.
More than 20 podcast episodes already, and you're actually changing up your introduction? I didn't think I'd live to see that this season.
You have to adapt, be flexible, and move with the times. This is the only way to ensure that you welcome the future with open arms. And speaking of flexible, today it's getting really dirty in our podcast.
Oh, well, chums. I think our listeners might be imagining, or rather hoping, for something different than what today's episode is actually about.
Oh, Seymour, don't think too slippery again, you lout. No, we wanted to talk about your garden extension. You've been talking my ears off for the last few weeks about how we should finally do a podcast episode about it.
That's because it's worth it.
Oh boy, do I have a story to tell. Remember when I decided to buy that greenhouse? It was like a dream come true.
Ah, yes, the infamous decision that would change your life forever. What made you think this was a good idea?
Well, it all started with old Bartholomew's enthusiasm. He loves digging in the dirt almost as much as I love cooking up a storm.
I mean, as a skeleton, he'll probably be more than used to dirt. He's been under the ground long enough, and it's taken him some time to dig himself out. But wow, I must say, now you're taking gardening advice from a skeleton? What's next? Asking Cosmo for fashion tips.
Don't knock it till you try it. Old Bartholomew has some unique insights, like the time he suggested we plant giant pumpkins to attract more customers to our dinner parties.
Giant pumpkins? You mean like the ones that could crush a small car?
Exactly. I was thinking of hosting pumpkin-themed dinner parties, and those behemoths would be the centerpiece. Can you imagine it? Skinner's Pumpkin Palooza.
You know what, Skinner? That's not a bad idea at all. We could make it a community event. Invite Sonic and Shadow over for some pumpkin carving fun. Or maybe even some of our wonderful listeners we've met at Gigglewood Resort.
That's what makes it exciting. We should do that, and maybe we'll even grow giant carrots, too. Can you picture the look on our neighbors' faces and friends when they see those towering orange stalks? Imagine Loomis or Vincent seeing this. Their tofu cuddly toy is nothing compared to that.
Oh yes, they all would be green with envy. And Yugi might even bring his guy. Oh, cards to trade for some pumpkin seeds.
That would be marvelous. But now I have to tell you a few secret inside gardening tips. I got them from old Bartholomew, and oh boy, he was all for it. He kept saying things like bury the seeds at midnight under a full moon or talk to your plants. They respond better that way.
Old Bartholomew must live in Sims too, or how do I understand that? But I have to admit, I'm curious about those tips. What else did he suggest?
Oh, you know all. Bartholomew's got some other tricks up his. Well, not exactly sleeves. He said we could use his special blend of compost made from, get this, old shoes and last week's newspaper.
You didn't actually do that, did you?
Well, maybe just once or twice. But it added a certain je ne sais quoi to the soil. I swear, old Bartholomew swore by it.
You know what? That's actually kind of genius. The smell alone would keep pests away.
Good day, gentlemen. I heard you were discussing my unique horticultural methods. Allow me to elucidate further.
Perfect timing, Bartholomew. Chalmers here is eager to learn your secrets.
Absolutely. I've got to know more about these midnight seed burials and your interesting compost recipes.
The garden is a place of mystery and magic. Let me share with you the wonders of my skeletal green thumb.
Yes, please do.
First and foremost, timing is everything. Planting seeds at midnight under a full moon isn't just for dramatic effect. It harnesses the moon's gravitational pull to invigorate the seeds with lunar energy.
Lunar energy, you say?
Indeed! The moon influences tides, so why not the water within the soil in small amounts in seeds? But there's more. When you talk to your plants, you infuse them with carbon dioxide, which they need for photosynthesis. Plus, the vibrations from your voice encourage cellular activity.
Well, I mean, it's true from a certain point of view. My roses have never looked better since I started reciting poetry to them.
I can just picture that. But tell me more about this special compost. Old shoes and newspapers.
Yes, a concoction of unconventional ingredients. The leather from old shoes breaks down slowly, providing a sustained release of nutrients. Newspapers, on the other hand, introduce carbon components and a touch of nostalgia for the plants. But of course, it's even better if you allow little earthworms and other creatures to undergo the composting process.
Nostalgia for plants.
But plants are more perceptive than you think. The print on the paper contains stories and human emotions, which in turn enrich the soil with intangible nutrients.
I once found an old love letter in the compost. My daisies bloomed like never before.
This is all wonderfully absurd, but I can't argue with results. As a man of science, I don't get quite the point, but well, if it works. What other tips do you have, old Bartholomew?
Let us delve into the realm of pest control. Forget toxic chemicals. You need natural repellents. A blend of garlic, pepper, and dish soap will keep those pesky insects at bay without harming your plants or the environment.
I've tried it. Works like a charm, and my garden smells like an Italian restaurant.
I can imagine. What about watering? Any tips there?
Watering, the lifeblood of any garden. Always water in the early morning or late evening to minimize evaporation. Never water plants at midday when the sun is at its hottest. If any drops of water land on the leaves, they will act as magnifying glasses and, in the worst-case scenario, burn the plant or stimulate the evaporation process. And, if you can, use collected rainwater. It's softer and free from the chemicals found in tap water.
I set up a rain barrel last month. The plants love it.
That's actually quite practical. It is also good for mosquito larvae and other insects. Anything else, Bartholomew?
A little secret. Every plant has a companion plant that helps it thrive. For instance, tomatoes grow better with basil nearby, or strawberries and garlic, celery and cucumbers, and so on. They complement each other's growth and ward off pests. Or at least, they do not inhibit each other when absorbing nutrients from soil layers.
Yeah. My tomatoes and basil are like best friends. I have named my tomato plant Karsten and my basil Brigitte. They even taste better together.
Companion planting. Makes sense? What about dealing with weeds?
Mulch, my dear Chalmers. A thick layer of mulch not only suppresses weeds, but also retains moisture and adds organic matter to the soil as it decomposes.
I've been using grass clippings and fallen leaves. My garden looks like a woodland wonderland.
You really have embraced this, Skinner. Bartholomew, any final words of wisdom?
Remember that gardening is as much about patience as it is about technique. Tend to your garden with care and love, and it will reward you in ways you never imagined.
Well said, Bartholomew. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Indeed, thank you. I never thought I'd be taking gardening advice from a skeleton, but here we are.
It's been my pleasure, gentlemen. If you'll excuse me, I have a date with the moon and a fresh batch of compost to prepare. See you later. It was nice to be part of such a young media form. A podcast. If only my great Aunt Ulrich knew about it, but she wouldn't understand a thing. She was born in the 17th century, and the world has changed a bit since then. But at 250 years old, I'm still fit and agile. You could say I connect with the young dudes, yo.
It was a pleasure to have you with us. Good luck with your plans. I'll come and help you plow up our flower bed later. Or just ask my golem, Tara. She's on her lunch break later. But don't overuse her help. You know what golem unions are like.
Will do. See you later, gentlemen. Goes away and whistles a song to himself.
Oh, yes, your pet skeleton. Really an enrichment for life.
Who are you telling? And such a great help with the gardening. In general, having your own garden is so wonderful. And think about all the possibilities. We could grow our own herbs, spices. Maybe even try some exotic fruits from around the world.
I'm in. Let's do it. What kind of fruits were you thinking?
Oh, anything that would thrive in our Memafield climate. Old Bartholomew was convinced we could grow a tropical paradise.
With Bartholomew's tips, I wouldn't be surprised if we did. Let's get started. We didn't invest in our clip on microphones for nothing, and it's such great weather outside right now, a perfect spring day.
You're right. Now we're spitting in our hands again. We're increasing the gross national product.
Skinner and Chalmers go outside and begin working on their garden, chatting animatedly. It's a beautiful spring day. There's a gentle breeze in the air. The sun is pleasantly warm, and the hourly morning music of Animal Crossing can be heard in the background.
You know, we could set up a small greenhouse. That way we could control the environment better and maybe even extend the growing season.
That's a brilliant idea. We could grow delicate herbs and exotic spices that need a bit more warmth and protection.
Imagine fresh basil, cilantro, and maybe even saffron from our own backyard.
And we could experiment with different types of peppers. I've always wanted to try growing ghost peppers and see just how spicy they can get.
You're braver than I am, Skinner, but it sounds like a fun challenge.
We should also consider setting up a composting system. It's sustainable and would give us rich soil year-round.
Absolutely. Plus, it would be a great way to recycle kitchen scraps and yard waste.
And you know what Bartholomew says about compost. It's like black gold for your garden.
Can't argue with that. What about irrigation? We could install a drip system to ensure our plants get the right amount of water without wasting any.
Yes. And we could use timers to water early in the morning or late in the evening, just like Bartholomew suggested.
Perfect. This garden is going to be amazing. We'll have fresh produce and herbs all year long.
Imagine making fresh salsa with homegrown tomatoes, cilantro, and peppers.
And don't forget the guacamole. Avocado trees could be a bit tricky, but with a greenhouse, we might just manage it.
I love it! And how about some berry bushes? Fresh blueberries, raspberries, and strawberries would be a great addition.
Definitely. We could even make our own jams and preserves.
And maybe some grapevines. Fresh grapes and homemade wine. How great would that be?
Now you're talking. We could have our own little vineyard right here in Memafield. I feel like a real-life version of Stardew Valley, honestly.
Yeah, we'll need to plan out the layout carefully to make sure everything has enough space and sunlight.
Agreed. We should map it out and decide where to place everything for optimal growth.
This is going to be fantastic, Chalmers. I'm so glad we're doing this together.
Me too, Skinner. Let's make this garden the envy of Memafield.
You know, we could also add some raised beds. They're easier to manage and great for plants that need well-drained soil.
That's a good point. Plus, they'd be perfect for root vegetables like carrots and potatoes.
And they'd look great, too. We could use reclaimed wood to give them a rustic feel.
I like the sound of that. And maybe some vertical gardens on the fence for herbs and small plants.
Yes. Vertical gardens would save space and add a nice aesthetic touch. We could grow all sorts of things there.
This is going to be one impressive garden. Bartholomew will be proud.
Certainly will. And with his tips, we're sure to have the best garden in Memafield.
Let's get to it, then. We've got a lot of work ahead for the next weeks, but it's going to be worth it.
I totally agree. You know, we should also think about attracting beneficial insects to the garden. Bees, ladybugs, and butterflies can help with pollination and pest control.
Good idea. We could plant some flowers that attract them, like lavender, sunflowers, and marigolds.
And maybe a small pond or bird bath to attract birds and other wildlife. They can help keep pests in check. We can also make a valuable contribution to insects. Species extinction and the loss of natural habitats are unfortunately a problem. Of course, a certain natural rate of species extinction is normal, but since industrialization, this rate has increased by 100 to 1,000 times. So maybe let's use a small section as a wild meadow. Butterflies and the like can feel right at home there.
What a wonderful idea. This garden is going to be an oasis of biodiversity. I can't wait to see it all come together.
Me neither. Let's get to work and make this garden a reality.
The two lovebirds have been working in their garden for a long time and have already planted their first beds. After a successful gardening session, they completely forgot that they were actually recording a podcast episode. They go back inside, take a short break, and continue the podcast.
What a lot of work, but it was great fun.
But so what? We should do it again tomorrow.
Oh, yes, at least as long as the weather is fine. It's supposed to rain in the morning, but we could continue in the afternoon around 2 when I'll be back from work.
That's what we'll do. And then we can see about those exotic fruits you wanted to grow in the greenhouse.
Oh, yes. Oh, Bartholomew was convinced we could grow a tropical paradise in that thing.
And by tropical, you mean whatever's left over after your cooking experiments go awry.
Hey, that's not fair. I've had my share of successes. Like that time I made a decent beef Wellington for about 30 seconds before it caught fire.
Yes, because nothing says success like serving burnt pastry to our friends and neighbors. Laughs. But hey, at least you try.
Hey, I did. And who knows? Maybe this greenhouse would be the key to a culinary breakthrough. Old Bartholomew was convinced we'd become famous for our farm. Two-table cuisine.
You know what? That's not as crazy as it sounds. We could have our own cooking show, Skinner Chalmers. The Garden Gurus has a nice ring to it.
I like the way you think. And speaking of which, let's get into part 2 of Laura today's episode and relive some of those catastrophes we faced besides from our gardening adventures before. It was quite the wild ride over the last weeks.
Bring it on. It's probably about the food.
Well, you see, the great experiment phase was quite the adventure. I tried everything to find substitutes for my, let's call them charred delights.
Oh boy, do tell.
Well, Bartholomew suggested we use some mystery meat from the local butcher. I mean, who knows what it is, but it's definitely a conversation starter.
You used meat from unknown sources in your cooking. What could possibly go wrong?
Hey, it was just one time. And it added a certain je ne sais quoi to the dish.
I'm sure they were. Did you at least ask what kind of mystery meat it was?
No. But old Bartholomew assured me it was 100% organic and free range. He also hinted that no animal had to suffer for this. So who knows where the stuff comes from?
Free range from the depths of hell? I'm surprised you didn't serve a chunk of Shadow's fur as an appetizer.
Hey, that wasn't my finest moment. But hey, we learned something new. Never trust a butcher with a shady grin.
But surely nobody could have thought of that on their own. And don't forget to talk about the experimental veggies old Bartholomew recommended. What were those?
Yes. He said they'd add some unique flavor profiles. I think he meant unique as in, will make you question your life choices. Laughs.
Unique. Like the time you tried to serve a cactus as a side dish?
Oh, that was just one little mishap. But yes, old Bartholomew did suggest we try some unusual vegetables, like the ones with those tiny little hairs.
You mean like the ones that make you break out in hives?
Yes, those ones. They added a certain texture to the dish.
I'm sure. How did your guests react when they started itching all over their bodies?
Well, it was lively. But hey, at least we tried something new.
Yes, because nothing says new like serving a salad that makes people look like they have chicken pox.
Hey, I learned from my mistakes. And speaking of which...
What else did old Bartholomew suggest? Was there anything edible?
Oh, yes. He recommended we try some wild herbs he found in the nearby woods. You know, for that extra kick.
Wild as in growing on a toxic waste dump? What did you expect to happen?
Well, it was supposed to add some earthy flavor. But I think we got the wrong kind of herbs. The ones that make your tongue feel like sandpaper.
Ah, yes. Those are always a hit at parties.
Maybe once again, not my finest moment, but hey, it was all part of the learning process. And we did discover some new flavors.
Like the one that tastes like someone poured gasoline on your tongue?
Well, that's a bit harsh. But yes, there were some interesting moments.
And I'm sure old Bartholomew was thrilled to see you experimenting with his tips. Did he have any other gems up his sleeve?
Oh boy, did he ever! He suggested we use compost tea as a seasoning.
Compost tea? What's next, serving soil as a side dish?
Well, I think Bartholomew got his wires crossed. The neighbors were, confused.
Confused like the time you tried to serve them a salad made from last week's trash.
Well, maybe that one was a bit of an overreach.
But hey, at least we had fun. And speaking of which, what about those experimental fruits you mentioned earlier? Did they make it into the mix?
Yeah. Old Bartholomew found some exotic berries that were supposed to be edible. I think.
Exotic, as in growing on a radioactive dump here on Earth today. What did you expect would happen when you ate them?
Well, let's just say they added a certain glow to the dish. But hey, it was an experience.
Ah, yes. Nothing says fine dining like eating food that glows in the dark.
He's actually a professional chef with years of experience.
What?
Yes, it turns out he was just trying to help me improve my cooking skills, but I didn't take his advice seriously enough.
So that's why you were serving him as a waiter at your dinner parties?
Yeah, well, Bartholomew insisted on helping out. And let me tell you, he was an amazing host. Our guests loved his service.
I bet they did. So, what's the final verdict? Did your experiments pay off?
Well, we learned a lot about gardening and cooking over the last weeks. And how to make our neighbors laugh. But at least old Bartholomew knows his stuff. He really does. He knows a lot about gardening.
And I'm sure he'll be back for more of your charred delight.
Yay! Don't worry about it. And who knows? Maybe one day old Bartholomew will have his own cooking show.
With a warning label on the menu, may cause spontaneous combustion.
That's what the right person says.
Oh no, don't remind me. Principal Skinner, I'm on fire. Spontaneous human combustion. Laughs.
Good one, Chalmers.
But yes, dear viewers, believe me when I say that old Bartholomew is really great and really knows a lot about this kind of thing. I just wanted to joke a bit in this episode. He does indeed know a lot about cooking and gardening. He wouldn't serve poison berries either, I think.
Well, looking back, we definitely faced some challenges in maintaining the garden.
Like trying to keep it from taking over the neighborhood.
Well, that was one issue. But old Bartholomew helped us with pest control. Sort of.
Oh boy, how did you manage this? Did you use some mystery meat on the pests too?
No. But we did try using some natural methods, like, shouting at them to leave.
Yes, because nothing says pest control like yelling at insects.
Hey, it was worth a shot. And hey, it worked. For about 5 minutes before they came back with friends.
I'm sure the neighbors loved that. Laughs. Did you ever consider using some actual pest control methods?
Well, we did try to use some experimental traps. Yeah, like those sticky things old Bartholomew found in the woods.
The ones that looked like they were made from last week's trash. What did you expect would happen when you set them off?
Well, let's just say it was an experience. But hey, we learned a lot about gardening.
And how to make our neighbors laugh.
Hey, that's the spirit. And speaking of laughter, I have to admit, maybe my dream wasn't as bright an idea as I thought.
Don't be too narrow-minded. It was fun to expand the garden, despite all the unusual circumstances.
Yeah, we had fun with it.
And that's what matters. We learned a lot and made some great memories with old Bartholomew.
Exactly. Well, folks, it looks like we've reached the end of our gardening adventure. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
And thanks to old Bartholomew for his creative input.
Yeah, he's definitely a unique influence in my life. But hey, we learned a lot and had some great times along the way.
Like how not to garden.
Good one again. And who knows? Maybe one day I'll try again, with better results.
We can only hope. Thanks for tuning in to Skinner Chalmers Weekly Roast. We'll be back next time with more laughs and adventures.
And maybe a new recipe or two. Don't forget to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and share your own gardening disasters with us on social media using hashtag Skinner and Chalmers. Garden, fail.
And don't worry if you see some giant pumpkins in the neighborhood. It's just our neighbors trying to keep up with Skinner's latest project.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, stay roasty and remember, even the best laid plans can go awry.
Goodbye. See you next time.